Hello and welcome to the show where Mark Moxom and Alain Braux talk with people in the know about health and vitality from the worlds of low carb, paleo and natural health. This time we chat with gluten-free baker Jessica Dean, who had to cut out gluten from her diet after finding out she had celiac disease and so switched to using nut flours.
Good morning, Jessica, and welcome to the Low Carb Paleo show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. I trust you are both suitably lively this morning.
Yes, I got much rest.
Excellent.
Good. So to give you a little introduction, you and I met through a little game we played last year, where we were the paleo people against the gluten-free people, and we won, right?
Yeah, we won.
We won.
It was awesome.
This was at Paleo FX, wasn't it?
No, that was at
Stuffed pepper.
Heather Jacobson stuffed pepper. She had kind of organized a little game.
Okay.
And we were partners, and that's how we met. Basically, she partnered up. So, for people that don't know you, Jessica, can you tell us about your background?
Yeah, I've been working as a private chef for the last few years, and have been working as an assistant chef for about 12 years. And I live and work in Los Angeles, and I also write the baking blog, the Almond Flour Baking Company. It's a gluten-free baking blog.
Mm-hmm. So on the personal side, are you celiac or gluten sensitive?
I have celiac disease. I was diagnosed in 2009.
Okay.
So I'm part of that group of people that is diagnosed later in life
Right.
as celiac, but I've had it was definitely a lifelong struggle of health issues for me. So once I was diagnosed, it was really just a lot of relief and a lot of healing.
How did you discover you were allergic to gluten?
In 2007, I had a very bad back injury. I was working as a massage therapist at the time, and I couldn't walk properly. It left me really, really disabled for about 2 months. And the person who finally helped me was a chiropractor. He helped me literally walk again. So while I was at his office on the third visit, he said, "I want you to go get some blood work done because I'm not understanding how this injury happened to you." So I went and I got a lot of blood work done, and he read all of the panels, and he said, "You seem very anemic. There seems to be some other things. I think you should go see an MD and really get this diagnosed." So after looking for several doctors, I finally found one, and he tested me for everything under the sun. He cut my hair. He took, cells from my skin. He took myriads of blood and, many other fluid samples and just everything all over the map. And found several things that were wrong with me. I had several autoimmune disorders at that point, but didn't diagnose me. And then a year later, after leaving him and going to a few more different people, I finally found a doctor who tested for that, and was finally able to put my finger on what was really happening. And just before that, I had gone to a nutritionist, and she said, "Why don't you try just getting off of gluten?" So I did that. That was in 2009, and started to experience some really good benefits just from doing that. And so then went to the doctors. And
were you vegetarian or vegan before that?
I had played around with that a few times. I had been a raw vegan, and I had played around with vegetarianism a few times actually. And um, every single time, I think I did it about three times, where I actually made a very valiant effort to become a vegetarian. And every time that I did, I got sicker and sicker.
Right.
So it was a real lesson for me. And then when I found out that I have celiac disease, I was able to really understand why vegetarianism did not work for me at all.
Mm.
I was so malnourished by the time I got diagnosed that that you know I think that there are certain people in this world who can be vegetarian and who can function very well with that lifestyle.
Mm.
And then there are people like me who just
Mm.
that does not work at all.
No,
So
I'm in that camp as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just and I do believe that there are certain groups of people who can be vegan and who can be vegetarian. I think it's very healthy for the balance of the planet, for all of these different lifestyle choices. But there are also people who cannot be vegetarian, who cannot do without meat because of the nutrients involved. So and
Right.
probably it might have to do with blood work. I'm an O blood type. It's the oldest blood type in the world, and my genes are just used to, meat.
Right. Would you say nowadays are you paleo or just are you mostly focused on the paleo diet or are you just generally gluten free?
No, I am. I for many years after getting diagnosed, I became paleo, and it helped me immensely. And now, just this past, I would say 6 months, I've really gone back to eating some complex carbohydrates because my adrenal fatigue was not getting better. And I had started doing some research in that area and found out that certain complex carbohydrates can really help in healing your adrenals. So, yeah, I'm not strictly paleo anymore, but I
Mm.
was for a long time, which is, I really credit the paleo diet to healing my celiac disease and all of
Right.
the, surrounding immune issues regarding that, like my anemia and even my hypothyroidism.
Are you allergic to other kinds of foods as well or just gluten?
No, just gluten, just the evil, evil gluten. No, everything else is. In fact, for a long time, I thought that I, had other issues. I was really sad when I thought that coffee was the culprit.
Mm.
Thankfully, that is not the case. But I thought for my whole life that I was lactose intolerant until I started eating, until my paleo friends. There was this great um, little hole in the wall food co-op down in Venice called Revolution,
Mm.
where all the paleos used to hang out. It's not there anymore. It was shut down um, by the FDA and a few
Yeah,
more.
I read that story, yes.
Yeah,
It's outrageous, but
it,
yeah.
it was very outrageous when it happened, but we got around it. But that's when I started so I would shop there for a lot of products, and it was there that people turned me on to raw dairy and said, "Why don't you try raw milk?" And I said, "No, I'm really lactose intolerant." And they said, "No, you're not. Raw milk has all of the digestive enzymes that you need to digest everything in milk. It's the pasteurized milk that has no digestive enzymes at all. It has
Yeah.
a bit of vitamin D and calcium left in the final product, but once it's pasteurized, there are no digestive enzymes left." So I tried it, and that's another thing that I attribute to healing my celiac disease is raw milk. So no, at this point, I'm not allergic to anything. I just don't have the ability to digest gluten. Yeah.
It's nice to hear that. So you're a professional baker as well, and your company is called Almond Flour Baking Company. I understand that compared to some other gluten-free bakers, you don't use the typical gluten-free flours. What kind of flours do you like to use and why?
My favorite flours to use are almond flour, obviously, and coconut flour, and I also use chestnut flour, which is really beautiful. Um, there's, many different cultures have thousands of years of history of using nut flours, well before using grain flours. So I like to keep my baking really simple. It's been um, a really difficult translation to take a recipe made with a white flour, gluten-based flour, and turn it into a nut flour recipe. But it's been a wonderful challenge, and many times it's translated really well. So I've had a lot of great success with that, and I'm starting to get into more traditional types of baking um, when it comes to nut flours. Things like, almond polenta cake, which is an Italian favorite. Things like that that really kind of go back to the actual tradition of using nut flours. It's been really fun. And then I have a lot of the stuff on my blog is, brownies and cookies and cakes and all of that stuff, cupcakes and all the fun stuff to do
Right, which
with
is the
regular
most
stuff.
typically more American type of desserts. But
Yeah.
I understand that chestnut flour is much more of a European type of product. Do you have any hard time to find chestnut flour in America?
It is a little bit difficult to source. There's one company here in America, and I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on the name, but that is the company that I get it from, and it's based in San Diego. So they ship it up to me. Also, I know that Amazon has it,
Okay.
um, and you can even order it on a monthly basis through Amazon if you want.
How do you find working with chestnut flour different than using other flours?
Chestnut flour is really fine. It's much different. So chestnut flour and coconut flour are a lot finer. They feel more like actual what white flour feels like when you cook with it or bake with it. Almond flour has a lot more oil and a lot more moisture, so it breaks apart a lot more easily. Um, and coconut flour is very fine and very dense and very, very dry.
Very dry.
So be very careful when you're using it. Um, but chestnut flour is unique because it takes the fine quality of coconut flour, but it also keeps the moisture, even a bit more moisture than an almond flour. So it's a really fun flour to use. Um, the reason I don't use it as my primary flour, though, is because it's very, very sweet. It's
Right.
really naturally sweet on its own.
Right.
Um, so I can't always use that when I translate my recipes. But
Plus, all three of these flours are very paleo. They are, full of protein, and
yep.
you know, so that's a good way for your paleo desserts,
Yeah,
right?
they're perfect flours to use with baking paleo.
Go ahead.
Quick question. What do you use as a sweetener?
I have experimented with all different types of things. Raw honey, um, xylitol, date sugar. Coconut sugar is my favorite right now because it almost has a consistency of brown sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So it really adds a nice caramelization when you're baking, a little bit darker sugar flavor. Yeah. And there's this new product that I found. I believe it's not new. It's erythritol, but they've turned it into a powdered sugar. And there's no powdered sugar substitute on the market right now that is in any way healthy to eat. But I did find this, and I'm going to give it a try. I will use it more as a finishing sugar as opposed to something that's the main ingredient in my recipes.
Right, right. Because erythritol is sugar alcohol, right? With all that what that means.
Yeah, it's still very, it's not necessarily a paleo sugar, but
Right.
I've been wanting to try some powdered sugar recipes, like with icing and things like that. So I'm gonna give that a try.
So in that case, you would use it straight up, or do you dilute it with something else because of the potential consequences of using those kind of sugars?
No, I wouldn't. Well, the one um, the one recipe that I'm thinking of is I want to mix a little bit of it with creamy almond butter
Mm-hmm.
to make an icing,
Okay.
and some egg, but I don't want it to be an overly sweet icing. Um, so it won't, I'm not going to be using that much. I just don't want the granules. I want a very smooth texture because it's a layer on top of what I'll be making. So it's a finishing
Right.
it's a
Right.
finishing recipe as opposed to the main recipe.
And when you use xylitol, do you use it straight up, equal amount of regular sugar to xylitol, or do you adjust for sweetness?
I adjust for sweetness. They say that it's 1 to 1, but it's not. I do think xylitol is much sweeter, although I have to say that because I've been paleo for so long now that uh, the I don't have a taste for such sweetness in
Yeah,
my baking anymore.
me too.
In fact, I think it's a compliment. One of the biggest compliments I get from my baking, from my clients and from other people. There's a salon that I bake for down in West Hollywood, and one of the biggest comments that I get is how my products are not so sweet, and people
Yeah,
really appreciate that.
yeah,
So I think that we as a country have just gotten really used to overly sweet things.
Mm.
So when I do bake things, they're not nearly like a commercial product at all, and people notice it. People notice a difference.
yeah.
It's great.
Plus it makes your product very useful for diabetic patients as well.
Absolutely. I've had a number of diabetic patients thank me for the recipes because I've been able to, especially the ones that are bakers, they've been able to, try different things and have fun again in the kitchen. So,
Mm.
I was wondering if you could share some of the tricks you used to get off gluten. Did you go cold turkey or did you wean yourself progressively?
well, for me, it was cold turkey. I needed to go to cold turkey. But I have been asked this question before, and I guess what I would tell people is just don't overhaul your diet. Don't don't go out tomorrow and clean out all of your cupboards and change your lifestyle because more often than not, a week later it'll be like a rubber band effect, and you'll snap back even harder to your old bad habits. I would say the best way to get off gluten or to even just become paleo is take your time and change your habits slowly. Take one thing that you can live without, and just eliminate it, and add something that you think that you'll like. It's really important. I think food is such a personal thing, and we get really attached to our food, whoever we are, whether we're vegetarian or paleo or anything. We're very, very attached to being nourished. And so we need to respect that. We need to respect the parts of our bodies that are going to feel uncomfortable with that level of change. So my advice to people when they're changing their lifestyle and they're changing their diets, for instance, if you want to go paleo, just try it, one day a week. Just pick a day and pick some recipes, or look at a menu, a paleo menu online, what that looks like for the day in the life of a paleo person. Rob Wolf is a great person to check out. Obviously, your website is a great website to check out for recipes and resources, and just live like that for one day or even one meal and see what it's like, see if you can do it. And take your time. I gotta say that for me, I did go to cold turkey on the gluten because that was so important for my health. I was so sick by the time I got diagnosed. But but besides that, every other change that I've made, that I look at my life now, which is the cumulative effect of all of these changes, but all of these changes were made over the period of years, not days or even months. So even something as simple as dedicating yourself to drinking, you know, 8 glasses of water a day can be such a life changer. Because when you do something like that, you do notice small differences. And then that makes you want to do something more for yourself, right? And so then you decide, well, maybe I'm going to go paleo today. And then that day turns into 2 days. And then maybe you decide to dedicate yourself to the lifestyle, and then maybe after getting some success, feeling really healthy and really good with that, you decide, I'm going to completely change. I'm going to actually work out. I'm going to work out as much as I can. So it's just, I think changing habits, we all like to, there's people here in Los Angeles that are hired to go into people's homes and completely redo their entire kitchens and pantries and everything in the course of a week, so that this person doesn't have any triggers in their kitchen or their immediate environments, right? But unfortunately, those people, they leave after a week of
Yeah.
innovating your kitchen, and you're stuck there alone, and all of your triggers are going to come back. So take your time, pick something that's really important to you. If it's a matter of health, then do what you need to do to stay healthy. But
It takes a very strong will to get rid of some of the foods that we're addicted to, because it is an addiction. A good example of that is that recently I decided to get off of corn chip because that was one of my cheat and my treat,
yeah, yeah,
because I'm paleo, but I was cheating a little bit. And even though the corn chips were certified organic and certified non-GMO, because there was a fried product, and it was I hear some noise in the background, Mark.
What type
There's
of
something
noise?
going on.
What type of
Uh,
noise?
I don't know, clicking
Oh, sorry,
and
that's me. Yeah.
okay. Um, and because I suspected it was creating inflammations in my joints, so I decided to get off of it. And it was extremely hard because I was hooked up on the crunch, the saltiness, and everything. So eventually, about 3 weeks ago, I finally found a substitute that would be acceptable, and I found these uh, almond rice crackers, the Japanese style.
Hmm.
Yummy.
It's actually coming from California. I think it's Blue Diamond, and
Oh yeah.
they're little round crackers, and they are very crunchy. And you can choose whether some of them have a mix of almond, and some of it is pecan, some of it is hazelnut. So you get to change the taste. But what I was looking for was the crunchiness and the saltiness, and
Yeah.
I finally got that in a package in a product that was better for me.
Yeah. That's
So
great.
sometimes that's what it takes, little tweaks here and there to I did switch to paleo a while back, but and that wasn't too hard because I was already gluten free. But it wasn't that easy, and I'm not pretending that I don't once in a while grab a little piece of French bread and snack on it.
You know,
So
I think I'm glad that you bring that up because I don't know. I think that the paleo lifestyle is very, very good for people who are really detoxing from a lot of inflammation. It it really does help your body get rid of inflammation. That diet is one of the best out there for that. Um, but even when I was, going to Revolution every day and hanging out with hardcore raw people, many people told me that as, they were raw vegans, they were like 75% raw vegan, and then they would also introduce hot foods or, baked snacks or whatever it is into their diet. And I think that that's a really healthy approach. You're 60% paleo or you're 75% paleo or 80, whatever it is you want to say, um, as a base, as a foundation for your health. And then, you treat yourself and you let yourself unstress in that way because I think it becomes more stressful when you try to set yourself against this very high standard and high bar that doesn't always work. And if you're not facing imminent health problems, um, then I think it's perfectly acceptable and probably even healthier to be like a certain percentage paleo
as long
percent.
as you don't have any major health issues, for example, in your case, you couldn't cheat with any kind of gluten products because you would be severely affected.
Yeah, exactly. I don't I don't I would say at this point I'm like 40% paleo. But when I do have carbs, none of it, it's gluten. And if you're interested in, for those listeners who may have a gluten intolerance, not necessarily celiac disease, and aren't necessarily interested in a paleo lifestyle, but are looking for some answers, there's no better time in history to be gluten intolerant because there are so many wonderful substitutes on the market now for everything. So everything from tortillas to donuts, if it's just a matter of learning to get off of gluten, try that first. And I would say, to become healthier, try the paleo as a secondary
Yeah. To
foundation for your health.
to confess, this is a confession for everybody out there. Last Thursday, I was invited to a social event, and I just splurge on cheese and French bread.
Ah,
You
and
know,
some wine, I hope.
I don't have it at home, but when I go somewhere and it's right there in my face, it's like it's very hard to resist. So as long as I know that the rest of the time I'm 80 something percent paleo, I allow myself to enjoy that, knowing that I will, because I'm gluten sensitive, I will suffer somewhat from, skin, how you say, a little itching, and
Yeah,
that,
dryness and yeah.
yeah, that's how it affects me. But I just know that the consequence will be felt, and it takes about a day to clear out, and I'm fine after that. Regarding switching to gluten-free, I've noticed with some of my clients that they go from being gluten-free to becoming sugar addicts. What's your take on that? Sugar.
Yeah, it's a really slippery slope because since there are so many substitutes out there now for the gluten world that it's really easy to sort of just get re-addicted to gluten-free products as opposed to actually cleaning your body out from the inflammation. And unfortunately, a lot of the processed boxed products on the market that are considered gluten-free are like I think there I think that there was a study done saying that there's even more sugar in those products than there are in regular gluten boxed processed
Yes.
foods. And so it's really it's really a catch 22, if you really are dedicated to getting off of gluten, you do have to take into consideration where your nutrients are coming from. I don't think people take the inflammation that comes from sugar as seriously as so many other allergies. But sugar is probably the first addiction ever in the world. It's the most ancient, um, wholly distributed product. It's been distributed for thousands and thousands of years. Um, Most of that cultivation and distribution came from slaves. Sugar has a really, really dark, dark history, and we never take it into consideration when we think about our health. A lot of nutritionists say, to get yourself off sugar, and that's great, but I think that there's so much push from, marketing companies that it's really easily overlooked. But sugar is a massive culprit of inflammation and obviously many diseases with things like diabetes, and even now with the debunking of, saying things like meat fats are, you know, no longer to blame for things like heart disease. We have to look at really what is to blame. And unfortunately, people,
Sugar.
sugar's right there at the top of the list.
Yeah. Sugar,
Yeah,
and it's sugar is also blamed from some form of cancer as well,
I'm sure.
because cancer feeds on sugar, and
Yeah,
it creates a very acidic environment in our body, and cancer cells love that.
absolutely. And cancer cells love an inflamed environment, and don't, if you're not aware of your sugar intake over many, many years, you've got a ripe environment for all kinds of diseases. One thing I do want to say about the paleo lifestyle is, and I think we touched on this earlier, living for a certain time with a paleo diet or, you know, a meat-based diet with healthy fats and vegetables can really reduce your interest in sugar.
Hmm.
um, Not just your taste for it, but also your interest in it. You are able to get rid of that addiction to it because you're able to lessen the inflammation in your body. So getting rid of inflammation also has a secondary consequence of just not needing to to be comforted by food so much. It really does help with food addictions and cravings and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but I'm also seeing in paleo some paleo recipes that are loaded with honey and agave nectar or even coconut sugar. And even though it's better than refined sugar, it's still not the healthiest way of, eating your paleo desserts. Because people say, well, it's accepted in the paleo diet, so I guess we can splurge, right? Well, it's still sugar. I mean, this is still a sweetener.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it is always moderation. I mean, people bandy that word around, but when it comes down to it, that's what it is. And that's why it's good to, even if you're doing a percentage based diet, you're going to do 40% paleo or 60 or whatever it is, just stay in moderation. Don't have dessert every single day at 4 o'clock and then at dinner or whatever. You know what I mean? Have it a couple times a week, but no need to have it every single day. And if that's really what you notice in yourself that you need that, then that's where your energy should be in learning to do some substitutes. Maybe one of those desserts is an orange or an apple. There's nothing wrong with that, or berries. I think that there are so many children nowadays. We're a few generations into, a processed food diet, and so many children are born without a gut biome that looks anything like their grandmother, and it's really taking its toll. There's a reason why we have these allergies. Kids don't play in the dirt, they don't eat fruit, they don't they they're very, very sterile now, and their guts reflect that. And so
Yeah.
their guts are not able to process what we were able to process just a couple generations ago. And it's becoming really dangerous. And people have to take that into consideration. So,
There's more and more studies regarding the importance of keeping your gut healthy. I mean, to feed it, if you take antibiotics, you need to make sure to take probiotics again. All sorts of fermented food. We talk about fermented food on our show a couple times. This is all very important because you're right. I mean, always like to joke that when I grew up on my grandmother's farm, we'd play in the dirt. And yes, grandma would say, go wash your hands, but she didn't say, go sterilize your hand or sanitize your hands. It was, we were getting some of these bugs, and our body would, learn to adjust and adapt and live with it. And so it made us much stronger. Now kids are so protected, and so parents are so freaked out about germs and bacteria and this and that. It's just kids are losing all that protection, natural protection from their
yeah,
own body. Yeah. And then
yeah,
let's not even go into GMOs that are literally aggressing you know
yeah. I think
our
that's a
friendly
big,
bacteria and killing it.
yep, that's a big part of what's happening to the soil, the topsoil, the fruits and vegetables that we eat are becoming just as sterile as our guts. And yeah, we've got to be careful. We've got to watch out for these things because there is a natural, bacterial film in the entire world that works in conjunction and in harmony with our bodies and with the bodies of animals that we eat and with the fruits and vegetables that we eat. And it's to me it's like the ozone. Once we poke holes in it, it takes a really long time to restore that bacterial film that is so protective of our world.
It is said more and more that the younger generation will be sicker than our generations. I mean, Mark and I
Yeah.
and you probably be the last healthy, somewhat healthy generation. Even you admitted to yourself that your immune system was highly affected already. So
Yeah.
maybe the old farts like well, I don't know about Mark, but old farts like me, we've lived through the dirt and we survived. So we know we can take it. But for the younger generation, it's getting more and more complicated.
It really is. It really is. And it's getting scary, because of the superbugs and so forth and so on. It's just, I think that protecting our food and protecting our food sources
Mm.
and being more interested in where our food comes from um, and you know protecting our environment. It's not just a it's not just it's a selfish pursuit. It really people need to be concerned about these things, and I doubt that we're concerned enough.
Yeah.
um, Fortunately, I think that with you know the advent of things like the slow food movement and how much you know yummy tasty food has become a part of American culture, and how important chefs are in our world now, that there is a there's a real vocalization about protecting our food sources. But I think it really needs to we really need to become more aware of what's happening.
Yeah, I have a little concern when it comes to California. On one hand, you guys are the forefront of everything healthy. On the other hand, I see that California is suffering from a drought the same way as we do in Texas, but even worse. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so it's a big problem. I live in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is a desert, period. It's just the way it is. And we have to recognize that. And we're not really respecting that. I think that we're doing an okay job of conserving. We've definitely retarded the consumption of water in our for our part in Los Angeles County. But you know, this is the worst drought on record, and I don't know where we go from here. I think that we're really sort of up to the whims of Mother Nature at this point in terms of global warming. Obviously, this is connected to global warming and climate change and everything that's happening in the environment. And so we have to be very aware and start, you know, maybe taking things like this drought into long-term consideration in terms of how we construct cities and who moves here. I don't see anybody doing that in the near future, so I don't know how long Los Angeles in particular can last with
Mm.
how many people come into this city on a yearly basis to live here. Um, and I think one of my biggest fears about this particular drought is it gives companies like Monsanto the ability to say, see, you need us and you need GMO seeds in order to weather these droughts and so forth. And
No, no, that's a lie. That's a big lie.
oh,
That has not been proven in Africa or in India. They are not drought resistant.
yeah. Well, I still think that it, my worry is just that it's going to give those kinds of companies the ability to say that what they do is needed. And in my estimation, still, even with climate change, we have a distribution problem on our hands. We don't have
Yeah.
a resource problem. It's not a matter of resources, it's a matter of distribution. And California is a perfect example of that. California, most of California is a desert. So you have to respect that.
Mm.
And we've been operating under this assumption of being able to truck water in and pipe water in for, a century now. And, the earth is getting sick of it. We need to redistribute and refigure our resources.
Yeah, I understand there's already some friction between California and the northern states like Oregon and everything, where they're basically, tapping water, and now Oregon is starting to say, that's it, no more,
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
need to save our water for ourselves, for our crops.
Yeah.
I mean, on one hand, California is where the vast majority of our produce is coming from, but my understanding is that the industry itself is now making a whole lot of effort to do sustainable growing and recycling water and so on and so forth. So it's they need to adjust to that as
Mm.
well.
Yeah, there is room for, a lot of bright people to come in and figure out these distribution issues. I think that if there is going to be another quote unquote Silicon Valley, it'll probably be in agriculture technology, because these kinds of questions are arising everywhere. Um,
Yeah. I understand that in the wine business, they're already attacking the problem. They have sensors and timers and all sorts of ways to control, to just give just exact amount of water that's needed for that particular
Mm.
plant. And I wish they would use that in the general agriculture system as well.
But that's
I love
nothing
that.
new. That's nothing new. When I was
Oh,
in Israel back in the late 80s, um, down in the Jordan Valley, where they basically turned a desert into fertile growing areas, they had all of that stuff. They were delivering the water exactly to the plant. There were sensors measuring how moist the soil was at various places throughout the field when it turned it off and on. And by doing that, they saved something like 85% of the water that they would normally do by doing it manually.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, that's
yeah,
amazing.
It's 30 odd years ago.
yeah,
You know,
and it makes sense to get all that information from countries that are used to use these technologies. But my feeling is that in most of America, they still think that those resources are endless, and it's not the case.
well, Mark brings up a really good point about that technology that was being used in Israel. I look around, all you got to do is turn on the news or whatever, even just drive down a major city street, and you'll see n- just an incredible amount of waste
Mm.
going on in this world, whether it's water shooting up into the air because of a water main exploding. I mean, it's funny because we're in the middle of this drought. We've had a record number of water mains break in Los Angeles alone because our infrastructure is so old and unattended to. Um, we all we have to do is turn on the TV and listen to yet another oil spill and oil explosion and tanker, going off of the rails and blah blah blah. I mean, we waste so many resources. And I would like to say that it's just America, but I'm hearing about these incidents kind of all over the world now. So I think that one of the things that we have to do is really start to take a look at our waste. We could solve many of these problems by attending, to our infrastructure. And I don't know what it takes, paying people more to be more careful about the way that they operate. I mean, Yeah, that alone, shoring up our resources and taking care of what we already have, what's already there, could go so far. It could
Yeah.
go so far.
They could start by learning from Europeans, which typically are much more careful about resources, and
Mhm.
definitely take a look at, certain places in Africa, the Middle East, where they are much more aware of the problems and already using solutions. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's go back to paleo. We've been off the subject for a while.
How long have you been paleo now?
Since 2010.
All right, so it's a fair while. So who would you say has been your biggest influence since you sort of joined the paleo bandwagon?
There's a lot of people that I've followed. Rob Wolf, obviously. There's a woman, Elena Amsterdam, whose website, Elena's Pantry, has really inspired me. Um, and then there are a lot of sort of local heroes in Los Angeles that I've looked towards. So there's a lot of different sources that I've turned to that have helped me um, in just a myriad of ways.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I mean, do you get any time to read sort of paleo books from different authors, or is that something you can't get around to?
I don't do a tremendous amount of reading, although I have a couple of paleo cookbooks that I refer to frequently that I really enjoy using.
Which ones are they?
What?
I hope one of them is mine.
Yeah. I don't have your cookbook. I don't think I have your cookbook, Elaine. Do I?
I don't know. You tell me. I mean, paleo French cuisine.
No, I don't have that. I'm so sorry. But you know what? I have followed your recipes. I've been on your website a few times for different recipes.
Right.
Um, don't you have a paleo niçoise salad? Did you
I have
do?
a niçoise salad. I can't claim it's paleo, but yes, it is by nature. It is paleo.
Yeah,
You know,
so I've done a few of your recipes.
right.
Practical Paleo with Diane Sanfilippo is one that I'm thinking of. I really like that book. I've been able to use a bunch of recipes out of that cookbook. As a chef, I sort of love to just play around with all kinds of um, different recipes all the time from different people. I find that I love to take recipes that are already sort of established favorites and turn them into, whatever I want, whether it's the gluten-free thing or a paleo recipe or whatever. I don't know if you know this guy, Otto Lengi, but he's a wonderful Israeli chef. He has a restaurant in London called Otto Lengi's, and he has a number of amazing vegetable recipes that I love to use. He's really wonderful, and De Laurentiis has some really good recipes. She's not necessarily paleo, but she's got some really fun recipes that I love to work with. And
Given all those influences, when can we expect a tomb from you?
you know what? That's definitely on the horizon. It will probably my first book will probably be a baking book. So I'm sort of in the process of compiling that now. I've got about 50 recipes, and I think I'd like to get probably another 50 more before I really start to compile. But yeah, I have the woman that I'll be working with on that, and hopefully it'll be, probably within the next couple of years.
And
Yeah.
going back to sort of your journey into paleo, obviously you've had a huge amount of health benefits from following a paleo diet. What would you say has been the one that's made the most difference to you?
The biggest benefit?
The one that you've noticed the biggest difference from before you were paleo to having gone through the paleo journey.
when just before I was diagnosed, I literally, I lost my business. I could barely function. I just was not able to work. I wasn't able to have much of a social life. I don't think, you know, with certain allergies, like a nut allergy, the anaphylactic shock is so obvious and so deadly. But with somebody who can't ingest gluten, the effects are just as deadly, but take their toll over a longer amount of time. And for me, not getting diagnosed until I was, into my 40s, the effects were pretty. I crawled into the doctor's office, let's just put it that way, and was so incredibly grateful. And so for me, I think that the biggest benefit that I received from changing my lifestyle, getting off of gluten, committing to paleo, was my energy. Just being able to think clearly and operate for more than just a couple of hours at a time, to have my energy, and then to be able to do things like work out without injuring myself, becoming exhausted within 15 minutes. It's just been that's probably been the biggest thing. It's just the level of energy that I've gotten. Super. I mean, there's so many, but that's the one that stands out. That's the one that stands out. Your health is your wealth, If you don't have your health, you really don't have the ability to do anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you again, Jessica, for being on the Low Carb Paleo Show. And like we say in Texas, à votre santé, y'all.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Very much. You guys are delightful.
We wish you the best in your business and your health, and hope that you'll stay healthy for a long time.
Thank you very much.
Indeed.
I wish the same for you both.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us.